Welcome to episode 11 of the Monday Night Review. We're going to do something a little bit different today. When I was younger, the London A to Z was not only iconic, but it was absolutely necessary for finding your way around the city. And they have them for all major cities. But now, when everyone has maps and internet on their phones, you don't need a London A to Z anymore. Although I think you can still buy them. But as a thread in this podcast, and actually the original idea for when I wanted to do something about weird and wonderful stories, was to do an A to Z of different places and different countries. And so today is going to be episode 1 of the London Tube A to Z series. I really need to start off by thanking Holly for helping me pull these together. I send her really confusing late night voice notes at random times and tell her what I'm thinking, and she just creates these incredible spreadsheets full of information. And this one is particularly taxing for her because non-Londoners, the tube looks really confusing and odd, and some of the names are super weird, and she just nailed it. So and weirdly, the first stop on the tube is Acton town, and both of us came up with the same thing to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about the murder of Jean Bradley. I did so much research on this, and it's still going to be a really quick episode, which is really sad because there's just so little information, and you'll see it's surprising how little information there is considering there are loads of witnesses. So, Jean Bradley, who was she? She was 47. She lived with her long-term boyfriend, who I think she'd been with for 21 years, in Berkshire, which is kind of west of London. And she worked for a relocation management company, helping businesses move premises. Her office was based in New Bond Street, which is just off Oxford Street in central London. So she would drive to Acton, park on or around Carberry Avenue, and then get on the tube at Acton Town, which is really quick into central London. So the parking here is free and the tube service is regular and quick. Acton is a residential area in West London. So she'd done loads of research on where it would be safe to park her BMW. She was keen on keeping the car meticulous, is what her boyfriend said. And neither she nor he at the time had much concern for her safety. They were worried about the car. It's a very typical thing, I think even now, for people to park in this area and get on the tube. As I said, the parking's free. Parking in London is completely extremely expensive. So it makes sense to park there, get on the tube. You wouldn't really worry about your safety in this area. Lots of families living there. And also, if you think about it, she's not going to be getting home from work particularly late. So on the 30th of May 1993, Jean was walking from the tube station towards her car. It is dark, so it's about 7:30 at night, I think. She stopped at a newsagent, also known as a convenience store, to buy some cans of drink, and then walked onto her car. It says cans of drink, and in my head I'm like, oh, that sounds like boozy drink, but I don't think it was. In the 90s, I don't even know if you could even get drink in a can by then. It would have been like a Diet Coke or whatever. It was already dark by this time, but Acton's not considered a dangerous area by most people. And yeah, as I said, lots of people will be doing this same journey, walking from the tube station to where they've parked their cars. So it's not even that it's particularly empty of people. There's probably loads of people going to and from the tube station. So Jean's parked her car on Carberry Avenue. It's a residential street. I'll put a picture up on our social media. She opened the back door of her car to put her bag and her shopping on the back seat, and it was then that she was attacked. A man just ran up to her and started stabbing at her. The attack was really quick, and in a matter of minutes, it was all over. People were alerted to the attack by her screams for help. She was stabbed around 50 times with an 8-inch blade, thought to be either a carving knife or a butcher's knife. So at the same time, a carpenter called Patrick Cunningham is driving down the road in his van, and he witnesses the attack. He doesn't know that it's a stabbing. He can just see a man and a woman sort of together on the ground struggling, and the attacker then turns and flees, but he doesn't run. He just walks quite quickly. So he's witnessed this attack and he decides to follow this man. So the attacker leaves, he walks away. He's gripping onto this black plastic bag that's wrapped around something. And he walks past this woman who's in a car with her son. And she thinks he's behaving really suspiciously. His outfit is very suspicious. And so she sends her son into her house to call the police. And she thinks, right, I'm going to follow him because something a bit weird's going on there. So she follows him down the road a bit, and then she hears this van beeping behind her and asking her to move over, and it's Cunningham, who then drives past her, gets level with the man and jumps out of his van and goes to confront the man, who sort of ignores him and walks round him and raises the black bag above his head, and Cunningham kind of ducks out of the way, and the guy just walks off really fast, starts running. The carpenter pleads with passers-by to call the police, says there's been an attack. Again, he at this point doesn't know the severity of the attack. He just knows what he saw. And he follows this man into a housing estate, and the man disappears. But unbeknownst to Cunningham, up in the flats, there's another witness who sees the attacker walk into the estate and then hide in a doorway, behaving really strangely, kind of fidgeting, and then runs off further into the estate. So he then comes down. So, and the fact that there are so many reliable witnesses is partly down to the description of this guy. So the attacker is described as white, between 35 and 40 years old, about 6 foot tall. He's got gaunt features, hollow eyes, and a large nose. He was wearing a black hat that looked like a sou'wester and a 3/4 length grey trench coat and black trousers that flapped around his ankles. So the hat is really unusual. If you look at the police sketch, again, I'll put that on our social media. It's like a rain hat. So it's not something that you would see in that area of London. It wasn't raining. There's no real reason for him to be wearing it. And lots of people commented that it didn't look like they were his trousers, or perhaps he was getting his clothes from a charity shop, and that was why the trousers were too short for him. So, and he's clutching this plastic bag tightly and doesn't let go of it at any point. And a bit of this plastic bag was found at the scene. So the reason we have all of these reliable witnesses is down to the fact that he's wearing this really unusual outfit and like a grey trench coat when it's dark, so people can see him quite clearly. And they all say the same thing. Every witness that's asked to describe what he's wearing, they all say the same thing: grey 3/4 length trench coat, black sou'wester, gaunt features, short trousers. And they find a bit of this plastic bag at the scene, and it's got United written on it. So they are able to put out call for people. Do you know the make of this bag? Does it say United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates? Is it possible to track down where these bags come from so we can see if this person's recognised? But it's kind of a dead end. I think they do find out the make of the bag, but that's as far as it goes. So basically nothing happens. In 2012, a team of investigators used new developments in forensics to re-examine quite a few murders, about 27 of them, all of women, dating back as far as 1967. This is following the arrest and conviction of Gary Dobson and David Norris in 2012 for the murder of Stephen Lawrence in 1993, which was done using these new forensic and DNA techniques. So included in this reinvestigation was the murder of Jean Bradley and another woman, Penny Bell, who many believe could have been the victim of the same murderer. So let's a little bit more. We're going to hear about Penny Bell. The difference between the two women is that Penny's daughter is still campaigning to find her killer. She's still pushing for it 30 years later. And I feel for Jean because she didn't have children. There seems to be no one kind of pushing it in her corner. So Penny Bell was 43. She was stabbed in her Jaguar 3 miles away in Greenford in June of 1991. They are similar in appearance, and there's no sexual robbery motive apparent in either case. Though saying that, Penny did withdraw £8,000 that day, which was never accounted for, which seemed to be missing. So she was murdered in her car rather than outside it, making it seem more like she knew her killer. There were witnesses who said that they saw her car. It's this light blue Jaguar. It's quite distinctive. And she had witnesses say that they'd seen her driving erratically, mouthing "help me" to passers-by. Why nobody thought to help her, I don't know. A bus driver said that he saw the man holding the steering wheel when he drove past her, because the car was driving erratically. He looked in and he saw that the man was holding the steering wheel. Her car is then found abandoned. She's been stabbed in a frenzy. No one saw it. It was in a swimming pool car park in the afternoon in broad daylight. Nobody saw anything. So for me, there are quite a few differences. The fact that Penny had apparently been seen picking up a man in her car and he's driving in the car with her implies to me that she possibly knew her killer. This man seems to have been, the murder of Jean Bradley seems to have been more of a opportunist. So some people, including Professor David Wilson, believe that Bradley was the victim of serial killer Robert Napper, who was found guilty of several murders and rapes. I've put in 1994, but there's a very tricky timeline with Napper, and I don't want this episode to be about him. I could do a separate episode on him. Napper's since been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He was known as a blitz attacker, so he often attacked women in a sort of frenzy before fleeing the scene, so that would fit with Jean Bradley. Wilson believes that Bradley being located near the tube station fits with Napper's MO of using the London tube system to sort of get around and commit his attacks at random. However, when he flees the scene, a number of witnesses say that the perpetrator that they see knew the area, and that's how he was able to give Cunningham the slip. Napper, as far as I know, didn't know Acton, but whether he just got lucky or had been sort of scoping out the area, we don't know. Napper's been convicted of 2 murderers, 1 manslaughter and a couple in a string of rapes, all believed to be committed by the same man. True crime fans will know that if someone gets caught who's committed a few of these kind of crimes, it's likely that he's committed more, that he's just not been caught to and not confessed to. The whole arrest of Napper and his crimes was hugely mismanaged by the police, I believe. He's constantly sort of picked out of lineups, not turning up for DNA testing, and then when he doesn't turn up, nobody calls him in, nobody goes to track him down. There are women who've been raped who have given a very specific description. There's a photo fit, and other women are phoning up and saying that the photo fit looks exactly like Napper, but the police dismiss it because some of the women who were raped, some of them, not all of them, say that the rapist was about 5'7" and Napper is 6'3", so they didn't bother to bring him in for questioning. We know that Napa attacks women. He does so near tube stations, and he does so seemingly at random. He does prefer to attack women with young children, possibly because they're not going to fight back. They're going to be more compliant. And it's possible that for one of his victims, he actually could have been watching her beforehand. So we don't know how random that attack is. The women that Napa is convicted of killing are not similar looking to Jean Bradley. Both of them had done modelling. They were in their early 20s, long blonde hair. Jean Bradley had short hair and was 47, so not similar looking. But again, it could have just been that he was just doing a blitz attack. Napa is delusional. He believes, among other things, that he has won the Nobel Prize for fighting in I can't remember where he's supposed to have been. He thinks he's been fighting. And has a degree in maths. So it could be that I'm trying to put too much of a system in place for someone who perhaps is just acting on how their illness is dictating they are on that day. What I can't find, and I'm really intrigued to know, is if Cunningham, the carpenter, was shown Napa, had identified Napa, or anything like that, because he confronted this man. He's the person who definitely saw Jean Bradley's killer. So I would have thought that showing him a picture of Napa or asking him would be the right thing to do, but no one seems to have done that. The murder of Jean Bradley, and for that matter, the murder of Penny Bell, but as I said, Penny Bell, I feel, at least has family fighting her corner still. They remain unsolved. It could be that it was Napa, but I'm unconvinced. I think Penny Bell knew her murderer, whereas I think Jean was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think putting her stuff into the back of her car made her put her in a vulnerable position, and it was just completely random. Witnesses who saw her walking from the tube station and saw her walking into the convenience store said that there was no one behaving suspiciously. She wasn't being followed. Napa had had form for stalking, so it could be that he knew her movements, knew where she parked, knew the area, and that's what made his escape easier, and waited by her car that day. But she still doesn't fit with his victim choice. It would surprise me if, I doubt, I'd say there's about a 1% chance that for her attacker, this was his only murder. So therefore, I'm so desperate to get in the cold case files and just see if there is another similar murder. She's always linked to Penny Bell, but I would love to know if there's any other similar victims who would fit this murderer's MO. And I think it's weird that nobody recognised him. A very unusual outfit, very unusual hat, quite a distinctive look to him. 6'3", it's fairly tall in the UK, so it's a real head scratcher, this one, and just horrible. It was just one of those things. She's planning her holiday the next week to Rome with her boyfriend, and she just gets brutally stabbed on her way home from work. It's rather a grim one for this week, but that is the first in our A to Z of the London tubes. That's Acton Town for you. I have to say, Acton Town's still a very quiet, leafy place to live, so don't let it put you off. Thanks so much to everyone who listens. I'd love to hear from you, to hear what your favourite weird story is. I've had some great suggestions so far that are going to go on the list. Thanks to everyone who loved last week's episode at the Cecil Hotel. My mother's very cross because I said the Black Dahlia. In the UK we say Dahlia, but as it's an American case, I've always thought I should say Black Dahlia, but probably if I ever do it, I'll Dahlia Dahlia it the whole way through. So yes, I love hearing your recommendations. There have been some fab ones. I'm doing loads of research. I'm knee deep in weird online PDF in tiny font for one that I'm hoping to do in the next couple of weeks. So you can email in to themondaynightrevue@gmail.com. That's themondaynightrevue, spelled REVUE, @gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. And until next week, be kind, stay safe, and always check the back seat before you drive.